Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fifth Avenue Cinema Podcast, a podcast about missing socks, flower pots, and shitty chalk. We're coming to you somewhat live from the safety of our homes and bringing you the latest in all things cinema. My name is Genevieve. I am the podcast host slash projectionist, and my pronouns are she, her. And this week, I'm going to shout out the IRS for finally getting me my tax return. Shout out to those workers who were way overwhelmed. I appreciate their hard work. And I am joined by...
Hello, this is Owen. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the cinema coordinator. Also, shout out to the IRS. This is just unrelated, but we like when people pay their taxes. So I'll give, I guess, an anti-shout out to the people who don't pay their taxes, especially when you have a lot of money. Please, please pay your taxes and your fair share. Sorry if I'm monotone also. I don't know why that happened.
No, that's my favorite when I'm editing and you're just like kind of very robotic in your intros. It's really great.
I know. I kind of do it. I play it up a little bit, or I play it down. But yeah, I do it on purpose occasionally. But yeah, who was that just talking?
It's Nayeli, the podcast editor, and I use she, they pronouns. And shout out to the beach. The beach is nice. I found sand dollar. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Yes.
A complete full one immediately when I got onto the sand when I went last week. And it was just a super nice time, a little day trip. Also, Andy's not here. Had a little emergency, but they'll be right back next episode. And it's okay because today we're introducing a brand new member who is...
Hi, I'm Cadie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the new projectionist. And my shout out is to the kind folks at Fifth Avenue for hiring me. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Very happy to have you here with us.
Happy to be here.
So today we are talking about the 1994 film Through the Olive Trees, directed and written by Abbas Kiarostami. And this is Owen's pick, so I will let him give a little synopsis slash explanation, I guess. Yeah.
I guess I'll go into why I programmed it to begin with. Yeah, I've wanted to see his films for a long time. I've been knowing of his work since I got into film. Mainly Close Up is the one that everybody talks about, or Taste of Cherry, Certified Copy. But this trilogy interested me because I like the whole three movies that are kind of tied together, but you don't have to watch them in order. And I was actually going to switch it at one point, right before we had done the graphic. But I stayed with it because there was this article that came out on Mubi that is part of their I think it's called their In Bloom journalism series thing, where they talk about plants in films. And they went into a deep dive about the significance of olive trees, which I thought was really interesting. And so I was I'll just keep it because I really like this article. So shout out to them. That was really good. And yeah, I thought that just the naturalistic elements of the film were really interesting. Just the visuals are so stunning and make me want to visit, but I also don't want to be a tourist. So, there's that. And then I guess to go into a synopsis, if I can even explain it without you, the listener, watching it, I would highly recommend that you do, because it's kind of hard to explain, I guess. But basically, this is the third film of three. It is, I guess, about just the lives of the people that are making a movie, and it kind of just documents that process in a way that I guess I've never seen in a movie. It might have been done. I don't want to say that it hasn't, but it's really interesting how they show you the in-between takes and how people's personal lives bleed into that so heavily, and what result you get when you're filming. Very interesting.
Yeah, he does this cool thing where it's supposed to be behind the scenes of the previous film in the trilogy, which is really cool, and I feel like he, in a lot of his films, or I guess Close Up is the only one I've seen all the way, but he, focuses on kind of like blurring the line between reality and fiction, and I think it's really smart to do that through like the making of a movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, this film is part of the Koke trilogy, which is a kind of smallish, like villagey town in Iran, and that is kind of where all the films are set. And they have like a few repeating characters, a little bit of overlapping narrative, and so they don't, like Owen said, you don't have to watch all three of them to understand each one. They are all separate, and Kiarostami even was like kind of against, saying that they were a trilogy. It almost was like more of like the themes or like what's connected and just like life in Iran after the revolution.
Right. And I also thought that it'd be a fun exercise. Like, I think that none of us have actually seen the other ones. I don't want to speak for anyone, but I think that we are all going into this without having seen the two before it, which I thought would be interesting because typically I'm the really like anal person about watching them in order. I know I did that with kind of a similar example in the Three Colors trilogy, more Western example of that in the Criterion collection, where I watched them in order, even though you really do not have to because there's like very little overlap at all. But I thought it'd be interesting to see how like, and maybe watch backwards because you kind of now, I mean, I kind of want to see the second one to see where like the scenes that they're shooting fit in to the overall film. I thought it'd be fun to do that and talk about it as well.
Yeah, I was like, maybe I'll watch it, and then I was like, oh, it's kind of late.
Yeah.
But I will be watching them.
Yes, as will I.
Oh, and you wrote a good explanation. It is a film about the making of a film that happens to be another real film.
Right.
So
it took me a little while to write the sentence, but I wanted to do it, like make it complicated to like illustrate how it does, because I mean, everybody's review says it's super meta, which I wanted to make it complicated for people to have to think about like what it is. And even at times you lose sense of what you're watching because you don't know what's a scene and what's real.
Yeah, and I really like it that it literally like opens with the one like actual like famous actor and the rest are like non-actors being like, hello, my name is, and I'm playing the director of this film. And then it just like starts. So like immediately it's like a weird, like almost fourth wall break that already is like blurring the lines.
In the very beginning, I hate that I'm gonna make this comparison, but I'm just gonna make it because I'm not as versed in film, and so sometimes you just have to make a comparison like this. And in the very beginning, I was just kind of like, this kind of reminds me of Wes Anderson movies. Just like, I guess in the way that the shots are placed and how like,
for sure.
Yeah, the framing.
A lot of symmetry. Yeah.
The uniqueness of like each character. Yeah, that was like my first thought. But then as it went on, it kind of broke from that. I mean, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was really sweet. Again, more in the beginning. In the end, it got a little like, dude, calm down. Like, just leave her alone. But but overall, I thought it was very sweet. It reminded me a lot of Mexico. There's like a lot of similarities that I saw with like the flower pots and just the interactions between some people. Of course, very different. Mexico is very different, but like still, there was some like the countryside and everything. There's a couple things that came to my mind, simply because the name olives, and in them they only mention the olive tree once, and I noticed that they pronounced olive as Zeytun or something like that. Zeytun. I don't remember. I don't know if I like heard it exactly correctly, but I thought that was very interesting because in Spanish, the word for olive is aceitun or aceituna. And so something must have happened where we kind of got that word either through Spain or maybe somebody through Latin America. But that also reminds me of another word that we kind of got from that general area or one of those
Mhm.
languages around there, which is ojalá, because ojalá,
Oh, yeah.
to me,
Right. The religious tie, yeah.
to me, ojalá always kind of just meant hopefully, but now that I think of it, it probably means more God willing because
Yeah.
Allah is in it.
Right.
And yeah, I really like being able. I like it when I can pick up those similarities between like my culture and another people's culture. Also, this is a sidetrack, but I recently went on Etsy and I bought vintage Russian scarves.
Ooh.
And because I've always really liked the look of like a scarf, but like like a headscarf, but not a headscarf in the sense of like a hijab, but like just headscarves in general.
Right.
But also there has been times where I have gone into little research sessions about modest fashion, and I don't know, I guess like that part of it was very interesting to me to see what the women were wearing and how they were styling their clothes. Yeah, I really like headscarves. I don't know, I've always been super interested in them, and just because I recently bought them because I want to start wearing them, I just, yeah, I was like, oh, that's neat, like I'm gonna, you know, sort of like ideas of like seeing how they put it on, but also like thinking of how I can wear them without seeming like culturally appropriative or whatever. But a lot of cultures have scarves, so
right.
Yeah. I like the movie. Great pick, Owen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cadie, what were your initial thoughts?
Immediately, it made me think of the Apu trilogy, just because it's a very like both those trilogies have very human-y stories that are very interpersonal between very few characters, and also the use of like non-professional actors and then like one singular established actor. But I think what stood out the most was the idea that this was like a behind the scenes of another real film was trippy, because I mean you can believe that, but how it's shot is very like obviously in a very narrative way. Like there's several different cameras. It's not just like one guy like running around with one camera filming all the behind the scenes. And so that was kind of like was always in the like back of my head, just like thinking of like there's like what's happening. I mean, I understand what's happening, but it's just like it's a weird kind of addition to the breaking of the fourth wall, it being like it's a film in the film, but it's a real film, but it's a fake film, real film, fake real film.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. I guess I read that Kiarostami was like basically saw like this guy get rejected by this girl like while they were filming or something, and then thought like, wow, that's what if that happened, and like between the actors, or I think that like did happen. So it was also kind of like he was inspired by reality, which also, I'm just trying to like think the best
articulate
way
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is like it is a fictionalized version, but it has bases in reality.
Right.
And I also, I love the way that it draws attention to like the apparatuses and processes of filmmaking. Well, I really liked when they were like filming the scenes for the movie, that it would go from like basically like what the camera shot is, and then it would reverse and we would see like the crew with the cameras. So like calling attention to the fact that it's like being filmed. And one moment that I really liked, that had to do with that was their Hosan, like the main male protagonist, is like walking through the olive trees, and all of a sudden you hear a cut. Then it turns out it's like the camera crew was like near, and they had to cut so that he could like get in like behind the camera or something. But the way that it's shot, and because it's like a tracking shot of a scene, then you see a cut, and so it's like, wait, is that like the actual cut in reality or like what? So that moment was really cool to me.
Yeah, that was super trippy, just because like I at that point it was like, wait, there's the marriage thing like kind of off camera, but then there's also the marriage story on camera. And so like with the grandmother, I was like, is this off camera? But then they just yelled cut. So is it on? What's happening?
That also like draws attention to the fact that like films are kind of like their own versions of reality. Like they can sort of be based in like fact and reality, but it's also like being manufactured by like the power of the crew and like the director.
Yeah.
Which I think also relates to the final shot, where I guess I read that it's kind of like a repeat of the final shot of And Life Goes On, which is the film before this that is the film that's being made in Through the Olive Trees. And so it's like an extreme long shot, and you can see the like young quote unquote couple like walking, and then instead of it being just like a like third person kind of omnipotent view, this time we're basically seeing what the director of the film is seeing, since he was like kind of following them. And then Hosen, like they stop and like talk, and then he runs back,
right,
and they said it kind of looks like he's excited and enthusiastic. And so they were also saying like, is that just like the director's ending? Like, is that what he wanted? Like, is that his ending for them, his creation of that reality? Or is that not a part of the film, and did that really happen?
Right. It's also interesting that you bring that up, because in a lot of ways, I feel like it wouldn't be, because of how much he was trying to get him to lay off it a bit. I mean, with what was the part where he was talking about how he like said hi to her 3 times, and he's like, well, I only told you to say hi once.
Yeah.
And then there were like all the conversations between them I thought were so funny, because it's old wise man and young, just like super, he seemed desperate kind of like guy, which is just so funny to see. And then the way
was very white knighty at moments.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I do wonder that, now that you say that, if that is, or maybe just through a cinematic lens, is that what the director wants, or the director thinks the audience wants? So it's just like very interesting, because I know that this was a question I was going to have for the end, but like, what do people think was said there? Because everybody, or a lot of people, typically assume that she says yes to him because of his excitement, or seemingly excited, because he didn't seem like he would turn around, really, to be honest.
Right.
But there's always that possibility, since we don't know, that it is a no, that it is, for whatever reason, he's coming back. Maybe they're reshooting the scene in a different way. Who knows?
Yeah. I was kind of like, wait, what? Wait, yeah, why is he running back now? Because I was like, she's been ignoring him this whole time. Like, she's going to say yes now? Like, no, girl, stay strong to your convictions. Don't say yes.
Well, he left his stuff at the top of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw it, and she like turned back for like a second and then just kept walking, and then he ran back. So to me, initially I was like, well, it doesn't make sense for her to say yes. So she probably was just like, no, or just stop.
Yeah.
And then he just ran back to get his shit.
Yeah. I wonder if it was also because it was like what made him think that she was interested in him was when during the like mourning of her parents, because they had died in the earthquake, it's like they're both in the cemetery basically, and she like looks at him for like glances at him, and he takes that as like, oh yes, she's also interested. Like, I wonder if that was like also what happened. He just like looked at him again, like acknowledged him, so then he was like, oh, she's interested.
Or it's like the page turning thing as well, where it's like, if you're not interested, turn the page, and she doesn't.
Then she kind of like half turned.
Yeah,
she does it. She's about to, and then they're like, and then they say action.
Listen, I was like,
yeah. I guess we'll never know.
I like that there is not really a sense of closure. I think that's lends to its more natural, humanistic outlook, I guess you could say, and like that. Yeah, we don't always get the closure that we want, or like closure at all.
Mm-hmm.
It lends well to the film overall, and I think like the other two in the trilogy also didn't really have closure from what I read.
Yeah, I think what it also does is it like it grounds all the scenes at the same level as well, because I think what this film does intend to do is like show how important the in between is of like the scenes, obviously, because of, I mean, how long of that movie was that when they're on the porch and when they're walking up and down the stairs with that guy sitting there under the deck, like, so there is so much emphasis on like what we don't see as the audience. And if they do give that like cinematic, oh, she says yes, like we're together, we're in love. I don't know if that's what you would consider that, but we're getting married or whatever. That kind of takes away, I think, from those moments, because they're just like the thing that would get cut out, the thing that would get edited, or that we don't see at all.
It's very much like a blend between reality and fantasy, I guess you would say, the narrative. And so I think having like the ending shot being very natural, like just ending very naturally, because like yeah, I mean in life like you don't get like a nice little closure. That's just kind of a thing that happens in fake movie land. But like that juxtaposed with the like very cinematic wide shot was a nice ending to like compared to the beginning, where that's like a very like, this is, I'm just telling you up front, I'm an actor and I'm playing a director and that's it and let's go. So I think it's just all tied in very, very nicely together, and the blend kept going until the very end.
Yeah, a lot of times I felt like the camera was static, but like things were still moving within the frame. Like I really liked all of the shots like in the car where you're basically like seeing out the window, but the camera's like still, but you know, obviously everything's moving because they're driving. And I really loved the shot towards the beginning of the film that's basically the point of view like of the car. The camera's like basically like mounted on the front of the car, and characters are having conversation, but you just hear it and you don't see any of it. I'm gonna go like full film major for a sec. That really reminded me of this kind of like experimental short film by the film theorist Laura Mulvey, who kind of like pioneered feminist film theory and is like coined like the term like the gaze, the male gaze and stuff. And in her kind of experimental film Riddles of the Sphinx, there's a scene where to like decentralize the gaze, they basically like have the camera like on the car and it's just like showing, it's basically like swinging around like showing everything but the characters who are talking, and it's like a very like almost like decentralizing technique, and I felt like that was what was happening in that shot, and that it was more focused on the like scenery and the land instead of the actual characters, which was really cool. And then it also just like forces you as an audience to really pay attention to what's being said, because you don't see anyone. And then I feel like that was the only one that was really like that. But there were a lot of other times that the conversations would kind of be happening like off camera, like it wasn't in the frame, that I thought was really cool. Or the sound design, that it would be like the conversation was obviously happening like farther away, but it sounded like you could hear it perfectly and like close up. And I thought that was a really cool technique, and especially when there were like multiple conversations going on, like with Hossein and the girl up on the porch, where he's like declaring his love. And then you like also hear like the camera crew like resetting for the shot. Like that was just really fun and cool, and I think added to the naturalistic tone in a way, because I mean you obviously don't just like hear one thing.
With that one, the car scene that you were talking about, what I really enjoyed about that is that you can almost see what I forgot her name, what the woman is thinking, because she like tells the boys to go to school, and then she just starts driving. But of course, like you said, you're just seeing like that one static space like of the car window, and then she goes back and then she's like, do you want to come to the
Right.
shoot after class, and they're like, oh hell yeah, but in their own little ways. And then she starts going, and I just thought that's one of those moments where I was like, like how I was saying earlier, like how it was just really sweet, where it was like this lady understood that like this whole filming process is like a new and exciting thing for the children. And like, you know what? Yeah, why not? Why don't you just come and see us? Like, I can tell that you're excited to come see how it's done. But we don't see her. We don't see her facial expressions. She doesn't tell us what she's thinking. We just see the action. But it isn't like a clear visual of the action. It's like you said, I guess a decentralized version of the action, but you still understand what's happening and what each character is thinking.
Really, yeah. I also loved like in those shots you can see in like the side mirror.
Oh my god,
so
it's
cool,
so
yeah.
good.
It's like,
and also those are the kids from the first one grown up. The main characters in the first one. It's so good, that shot. But I guess maybe another scene that I really loved that I think kind of is similar to maybe what you're talking about how like much film means to the community, and also talking about it regionally, like that scene where all the kids are sitting on the one side of the rope, and then the director is on the other side coming up to them, and he asks them, he said, "You can't cross the rope, but can I please?" And then they all yell no. And I think just generally like seeing what art means to like the community and how it doesn't disrupt the environment at all. If anything, it enhances it. Maybe in the case of like the main conflict, it does disrupt it. But in general, like in terms of geographical location, it's like such a light in the people's lives. And it also shows how intertwined it is for them, because it's like he's quitting masonry to become an actor, but he will do it for her if she wants him to. He'll quit acting to be a mason again. But how much sacrifice and how much they have to put into doing it, rather than just being like these huge Hollywood actors and it being this isolated thing that is on a lot. It's like this is in some random town that they are filming, and it's just this little area that's blocked off by a rope, which somebody could easily climb over. But it's like this metaphorical boundary that's very loose. It's like very almost non-existent, but it's like this rope that separates it. But it's so cool, like to see that impact and see the people behind the art as well, and see the people like interacting with it being made, which is something we don't typically see. Like all the strings need to be invisible in big films especially. And I just thought that was really interesting how he approached that, and wondered if that was like a intentional thing, because I saw in that article that I was talking about earlier that olive trees are often used as like a trope to depict the Middle East in like Hollywood films, particularly older ones. But they have to use fake ones because they're so hard to grow in the certain climates that films are typically filmed in the West. And so using those trees specifically, like almost in every shot of the movie, except when they're on the lot, or not lot, it's the actual place, is maybe an interesting tactic that he uses to connect that.
The whole like tree thing and just like the general environment. I mean, obviously I've never been to Iran, but it was nice seeing like the natural environment there, and also kind of in the same way as like My Life as a Dog, and how comparing how like the country folk, air quotes,
right,
versus the city folk, and how the peasants, again air quotes, were like, nah, we're staying here. I ain't gonna live by no road. Whereas like a bunch of other people did end up moving to the road for like easier access to things. And just seeing kind of that conversation was really cool. And once again, comparing it to my anti-civilization research that I've been doing. But yeah, just like seeing the environment, and also how they were like, maybe you weren't able to sleep, but at least this morning air like makes up for it. Like, again, just so sweet.
I know.
Right. So like what I was thinking of connecting it to is last week I went to go see Pig, and which was filmed in Oregon and in Portland.
Right.
And it was very interesting because, you know, a lot of movies that I've seen are like in New York or in wherever, and it's always felt very foreign to me, like a different universe because I didn't grow up there. And now seeing this film, and it's like, whoa, on this big screen, that's like, those are our trees. You know, it isn't just it isn't just a random shot of trees. Those are our trees. Like, those are the trees that I see. That is Oregon. And it was very cool to see those nature iconography, you know?
I also saw that movie last night and had the same reaction, like, oh, I actually walk down this street, or like, I know where this is. And it is very interesting to have that connection to like space in a movie, because I mean, we're from a place that movies aren't really made here. I can only think of like Leave No Trace is another one that takes place in Portland. But other than that,
like Kelly Reichardt, it's kind of
right,
the main one, yeah.
But that's like different parts of Oregon as well. But that's a whole nother side conversation, like a side thing. I don't know how it connects to this film, but
well, I think Kiarostami was interested in, you know, showing the reality of Iran.
Yeah, for sure.
And representing them. Because I mean, I don't really know any other Iranian filmmakers.
Right. And also within some sort of context of like disaster that we're typically used to hearing in media, because the earthquake is the focal point of the film before it, and they talk about it in the scenes and it somewhat in the conversations, and to see the beauty, even though what we're used to is often disaster, or I don't even want to go into more stereotyping of Middle Eastern people, but like, yeah, it's very amazing to see like just like the textures of houses and the dirt and all of the, like, I think every single shade of green is in this movie. Like, they found a way with the film. And it's just really beautiful to see that.
Yeah. I also, the essay I read, which is like on criterion.com, but it like kind of said something about the earthquake almost like being able to be likened unto the revolution that had happened like 10 years before or something, and just kind of like people being disappointed in a way that like the revolution didn't bring about all the change that it was supposed to. So it's like, yeah, this earthquake like happens, and then there's all this tragedy, and then now you just kind of have to like rebuild from it, which is kind of like the revolution in a way. But I don't know enough about it. I've read Persepolis, but that's
As did I.
that's my extent of knowledge, unfortunately. But I thought that was an interesting like cultural context for the film.
Kind of going back to what Owen was saying a little earlier about putting in the reality into it, I really enjoyed when they were filming, and I forgot his name. The guy, the white knight.
Hossein,
he was like, yeah, I lost about 25 members, and the director's like, no, 65, and he's like, no, it was 25, but no, I'm pretty sure it was 25. Director's like, no, just say 65. And then also the girl wouldn't say Mr. and like she just wouldn't say it. And then he goes up to Victor and he's like, it's okay, you know, it's not common these days anymore, so it's very reasonable that that is what she would say. And I really liked that kind of you know, like giving tips to the director about their how they do things. I thought that was really it just kind of shows like how how there are a lot of rules, I guess, with things, but more specifically with like film and filmmaking that we have maybe come up with over here that it just doesn't apply to other people because they didn't they don't have those same rules, and I love that. Because it also reminds me of kind of like, even like here, I haven't read a lot of theory. I don't know much about filmmaking. And so like hearing y'all say like, oh, this film is so interesting because it's so different. I'm like, I don't know that it's different. I just, to me, it isn't different because it's just a movie that I have watched and I really enjoyed it. And I don't have that background to be like, oh, this is cool. Like this is different from other stuff, when neither of those things are good or bad or anything. I just think it's very interesting. Right. And also, I'm going to tie this to, so I've been watching the latest season of RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars, season 6. And I can't explain it all, but it's a competition about drag queens. And there's this this drag queen called Yara, and she is Puerto Rican. And generally speaking, a good amount of the Puerto Rican queens, like, they have like accents or whatever. And that's usually a hindrance, air quotes, to their time in the competition. A lot of people blame it on the language barrier, but I think it's more of a, I guess, cultural difference. And the reason why I bring this up is because in a recent episode, one of the challenges was to imitate a Super Bowl performance of an icon, and Yara chose Shakira, and they had a choreographer, and the choreographer is giving the drag queens like what to do and everything, and the rules are you're just supposed to follow along and do the choreography that is being given to you. But Yara is like, oh no, Shakira wouldn't do that, or actually Shakira would do it like this, and it kind of reminded me, it's like, yeah, like to Yara, why is she not going to tell you how what she knows about her favorite icon, And then you have like these clips of the other queens being like, girl, don't just say what Jamal says to do, just say what they say to do. And it's funny because a lot of people kind of found Yara to be rude, but I never did, because to me it was very obvious that it's like, it's just a cultural, like, you just grew up differently, and like you can't expect this other people to abide to your rules,
Right. I think even that also seeps in with like the relationship and the conventions of Hussein chasing after this girl, because at the beginning I was kind of like, okay, he kind of needs to back off, looking at it from more of like, a more modern and Western perspective. But this is also a culture that I assume, because this is my only knowledge from this film, if it's supposed to be reality documentarian in some way, I would assume that this is a normal thing in culture, or semi-normal. And so you have to also suspend that notion that this isn't something wrong. Well, this is a normal thing in society to some extent. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, that was another thing that it's just a different, but from the audience to the way the film portrays it.
Reality of subjective.
Right.
That's what it is.
Kiarostami's work in general does a good job of kind of like presenting Iranian culture, and like we've talked about, like naturally and like as it is. So like Western audiences can kind of like learn about their culture through the films, especially since it's like, made by an Iranian filmmaker in Iran. And so I think, I also like was like, okay, well, how, I know I'm thinking of this a certain way, but like in this culture and time, how are his actions? Like, they seem probably more acceptable.
Yeah.
It's cool as someone not a part of that culture to be able to have these insights into the culture. So I thank Kiarostami for that.
R.I.P. So yeah, it's enjoyable. It's good insight to filmmaking practices that I had no idea. I mean, I've never been on a set in my life. I've never had a film made in my proximity. It's very interesting to see how people interact on and off set.
Thank you for listening to Fifth Avenue Cinema Podcast, where we come together to talk about all things cinema. If you like the show today, please follow us on Instagram and Twitter at 5th Ave Cinema with a 5, where you can reach us for questions or comments. You can also reach us by email at film@pdx.edu. We hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as we enjoyed making it. Catch you next time. And remember, all Black Lives Matter and defund the police.